this weekend, the last weekend of the retreat training program, is about moving from being students and teacher trainees to becoming more that we're colleagues, also with the teachers of the Institute. And that transition is, of course, what a training program is about as you move from trainee to graduate. And so for this talk, I'd like to talk a little bit about my experience of teaching and of being a teacher, and just see what comes up. This year, in September, marks 44 years of my being a teacher. I started in the fall of 1970 as a student teacher in a high school in Long Island, New York. A student teacher means that I was still at the university in the education program. And in America in those days, in the last semester of your degree study, you were put into a school where you taught, and you had a teacher who was your mentor and whatever. So that was my initiation. And I've been a teacher for all these years, and I've of course been teaching different things. In those days, I was a teacher of English and drama, and that's what I qualified in. But as time went on, and especially in the early 1980s when I came to Germany, I began more and more to work in adult education. So I want to look at this aspect of being a teacher and also sometimes what's going on inside and what's going on outside. And many of you have been working for a long time in your professions. You have a degree of competency in what you do, and that's wonderful. But teaching, for many of you, it's the first time you're teaching in this way as an MBSR teacher and relating to people in this way. And I'd like to look at that process about how we first begin teaching and then how we mature. And I'd like to begin with a quote. I don't know if any of you are familiar with an American educator named Parker Palmer. Anyone familiar with him? Are you a teacher? You see, I'm sorry, I can't remember your individual details, but anyone who's a teacher from profession, it's kind of like when you're an MBSR person, you all know who Jon Kabat-Zinn is, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're a teacher in education, everyone knows who Parker Palmer is. He's that equivalent for teachers. And he's written many, many books, but one of the ones that I love is called The Courage to Teach. And I encourage you, maybe in the summer, to get into that book. It's a wonderful book about the spirit of teaching. And one quote from him, I'm going to read it now, and I'll read it again because it's not very long, but I think it's really significant. Teaching, like any truly human activity, emerges from one's own inwardness, for better or worse. As I teach, I project the condition of my soul onto my students, my subject, and our way of being together. The entanglements I experience in the classroom are often no more or less than the convolutions of my inner life. Viewed from this angle, teaching holds a mirror to the soul. If I am willing to look in that mirror and not run from what I see, I have a chance to gain self-knowledge. And knowing myself is as crucial to good teaching as knowing my students and my subject. I'll read it again. Teaching, like any truly human activity, emerges from one's own inwardness, for better or worse. As I teach, I project the condition of my soul onto my students, my subject, and our way of being together. The entanglements I experience in the classroom are often no more or less than the convolutions of my inner life. Viewed from this angle, teaching holds a mirror to the soul. If I am willing to look in that mirror and not run from what I see, I have a chance to gain self-knowledge, and knowing myself is as crucial to good teaching as knowing my students and my subject. So when we're teaching, and this of course may be true for other professions in which we're interacting, for therapists and for others, but really teaching is a journey. And it's about being willing, as Parker Palmer says, to look into a mirror of one's own inner life, however you want to. He says a soul, he's a Quaker, he's Christian oriented, but I think he also means turning inward to look within. And being willing to look in the mirror. And in the Zen tradition, we have a very famous phrase called the empty mirror. And by that, we mean by the empty mirror is that when we look in a mirror, do we see what's there? Or do we see only what we want to see? So the mirror is empty if we're willing to look into it and allow to be reflected back to us what is there. If it's not empty, if it's a loaded mirror, then we're seeing only what we're either willing to see or what we can see or what we want to see. And this isn't meant to be a harsh criticism or judgment of ourselves. Good is when you see, what's there, and bad is when you're hiding something. No, we always hide things from ourselves. The commitment, however, as a teacher, is to do the best we can to try to see whatever is going on in ourselves so that we can support ourselves to be with it and then in the service of teaching. Now, this takes time. It takes maturity. It takes development, as you all know in your own professions in which you have competency. This is what I have competency in, so I'd like to also share it with you and ask you each time to make comparisons about what you know in your own life. This became particularly, how can I say, prevalent for me recently when I was talking with a student of mine. And we were doing supervision or mentoring. And this is a person who has 40 years of professional experience in guiding others and is training to be an MBSR teacher now in mature stage of his life. And and he's very early in the program, so perhaps many of you can resonate with what he says through your own process. He says, I have the feeling that this program is turning me inside out and making me question everything I thought I knew about myself. For example, in respect to the yoga, where he said that he always thought that he was a quite open person. And he was noticing through the yoga how goal-oriented he was. He said to me, For so many years, I have worked on understanding myself and looking at myself and going very deeply. What do I do with all the understanding that I built up about myself? My relationship to my past, to my family, to my work life. I have a feeling I'm going to have to change all that or look again because nothing seems to be what I thought. And then he said, I have so many stories about myself and about my way of being. What do I do with my stories? And so in this process of learning to teach and continuing to teach, we often, I wouldn't say may, we often are confronted with what we seem to know about ourselves and how we understand who we are and what we are, and what seems to be coming up that seems to challenge that. In other words, we're all holding on to a lot of stories that we have about ourselves in the same way as our participants are. That's not bad. Stories are part of our life. The way we interpret things, the way we see things, the way we understand things, and in terms of our relationships. But they are stories. And the question is, are they skillful and they support us? Or do they get in the way and block us? And if they do, how can we work with them in a skillful way that they lead to self-discovery? What Parker Palmer calls the entanglements I experience in my convoluted life, and allow us to be free with, not from, but with our history, our present, and our future. Aren't our students in class facing exactly the same thing? As they begin to explore how they relate to stress, how they relate to the stories, to the situations of their life, how they've responded to their illness, to their family situation, to whatever factor in their life has brought them to come to a stress reduction program or a MBCT course. Sometimes as teachers, we're afraid of those stories. We're afraid of the stories that students have because we're afraid they're going to they place expectations on us about helping them with their stress and showing them how to be with the stress. But we also know that part of that stress is created by the story that they're carrying about it. And if there's not a willingness to look into the mirror, the growth and development and practice that can happen will not happen. And then the pressure will be on us. So sometimes teachers get very impatient about people's stories. You're just holding on to a story. I've heard MBSR teachers say, as somebody says something, that's just a story. That's not school. What that is one's own defense to try to protect. So it's not helpful to say to a student, that's just a story. In inquiry, guidance, if we can support them that they see that, that's different. And that's, again, becoming aware of how something may affect us. We can say till the sky is the limit, don't take things personally. We always take things personally. Teaching is one of the most preferred personal professions that it gives because we're in relationship all the time. And so, again, having an unrealistic expectation about how we ourselves work with it can also put ourselves under pressure. So we can treat stories with respect, we can treat perspectives with respect, and at the same time also say, well, can I look further within? Can I see what is there to learn here? What can I learn about myself? And what can I learn about the situation that can help me?